Hello everyone, today the topic which we guys gonna study is atrial fibrillation. So what is atrial fibrillation? The atrial fibrillation is the most common sustained cardiac arrhythmia. What is meant by the sustained cardiac arrhythmia? Sustained cardiac arrhythmia mean that abnormal heart rhythm which will persist for more than 30 seconds. So it is called as a sustained cardiac arrhythmia. The overall prevalence of atrial fibrillation is about 0.5% in adult population, but its prevalence rises with age. At the age group of about 60 to 65 year, the prevalence of atrial fibrillation is about 1%. But at the age group of 80 or above 80 year, the prevalence rises to 9%. So the atrial fibrillation is an old age disease. Atrial fibrillation is important to diagnose and treat because the atrial fibrillation is associated with significant morbidity and mortality because of two reasons. The first one is that atrial fibrillation occur in those patients who have a previous heart condition. So when a patient have a previous heart condition, the patient is more prone to lethal complication. The second one is that atrial fibrillation cause systemic emboli. So patient is more prone to stroke and other systemic embolic disease. So there is an increased risk of mortality in atrial fibrillation. So what happens in atrial fibrillation? The atrial fibrillation is a complex cardiac arrhythmia. It involves two pathological processes. The first one is an abnormal automatic firing, and the second one is that multiple interacting reentrant circuit which will loop around the atria. So let's explain these two processes with the help of this diagram. The episode of atrial fibrillation is initiated by rapid burst of ectopic beat arises from the conducting tissue in pulmonary vein and from a diseased atrial tissue. You can see this, the conducting tissue of the pulmonary vein marked by 1 in this diagram. From here the ectopic beat will fire and it will spread throughout the atrium. Now this ectopic beat which is spreading throughout the atrium will be sustained due to multiple interacting reentrant loop which will rotate around the atrium. Mean that the ectopic beat which is fired from pulmonary veins area will spread throughout the atrium and it will loop around it. It will rotate around the atrium and it will maintain the contracting state of atrium continuously. So as a result of this process, the atria will contract rapidly but in ineffective and incoordinated manner. So a question arises that why this ectopic beating is looping around the atria? It is because of two reasons. The first one is that when the atria is diseased, so it will dilate. So due to the dilation of atria and the slowing of a conductive system which originate from SA node. So the slow conducting system from SA node, the fast conducting system from the ectopic beating and the dilated atria, this all will contribute to the reentrant looping of atrial fibrillation. As a result of this rapid, irregular and ineffective contraction in atrium, the ventricle are also activated irregularly. They will be activated irregularly at a rate determined by an AV node. So it will activate irregularly. So in atrial fibrillation there will be a characteristic irregular pulse. This irregular pulse is a characteristic for atrial fibrillation. So it was all about the pathophysiology of atrial fibrillation. Now we will study the ECG changes in atrial fibrillation. On ECG, the atrial fibrillation will show absent P wave and the absent P wave will replace by a irregularly fibrillation wave. There will be a narrow QRS complex and the distance between the QRS complexes will be irregular, which will determine the irregular rhythm of atrial fibrillation. So these absent P wave, narrow QRS complex and the irregular rhythm are characteristic ECG changes in atrial fibrillation. You guys can see absent P wave, narrow QRS complex and the irregular rhythm in this ECG. Now let's study the classification of atrial fibrillation. To be very specific, it is not a classification. It is just a different terminology we use for atrial fibrillation depend on duration. The first one is the paroxysmal, the second one is the persistent, and the third one is the permanent atrial fibrillation. The paroxysmal atrial fibrillation mean that atrial fibrillation which will last within 7 days. Persistent atrial fibrillation means that atrial fibrillation which will come and go, but it should last more than 7 days. And the third one is a permanent, mean that it will stay for a long time. So what are the causes of atrial fibrillation? Remember that anything which stretches the atria or that cause the dilation of atria will cause atrial fibrillation. There are a wide variety of diseases. To remember this, we use a mnemonic PIRATES. In the PIRATES, P stand for pulmonary embolism or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. I stand for iatrogenic. R stand for rheumatic heart disease. A stand for atherosclerotic disease such as myocardial infarction. T stand for a thyroid disease such as a hyperthyroidism. E stand for endocarditis, and the S stand for sixth sinus syndrome. So all of these disease can lead to atrial fibrillation. Apart from these different diseases which can lead to atrial fibrillation, there are certain triggers which can precipitate atrial fibrillation. In these triggers, the first one is an excessive alcohol intake. Due to the excessive alcohol intake or a binge drinking, patient can precipitate an attack of atrial fibrillation. That is why it is also called as a holiday heart syndrome. Apart from excessive alcohol intake, increased catecholamine in blood, such as in different disease conditions there is an increased level of a catecholamine. It includes infection, surgery and pain. Due to these conditions, there will be also an attack of atrial fibrillation. Apart from these conditions, a tumor called as a pheochromocytoma, it can also lead to atrial fibrillation. What will be the clinical feature of atrial fibrillation? Remember that most patients who present with atrial fibrillation are asymptomatic. Apart from that, the patient can also present with symptoms such as fatigue, exertional dyspnea, palpitation, lightheadedness, syncope, irregular pulse. Sometimes when there is a undiagnosed or asymptomatic atrial fibrillation, there can also a blood stasis which can lead to intramural thrombi. So sometimes a patient with atrial fibrillation can present with stroke. Now come toward the diagnosis, that how we will diagnose a patient with atrial fibrillation. Remember that when a patient present with the symptom of atrial fibrillation, the first test which we can perform is ECG. When on ECG, when there is a irregular rhythm, absent P wave and narrow QRS complex, we say that patient is suffering from an atrial fibrillation. After that, we have to find out what is the cause of atrial fibrillation. For that, we perform history and physical examination. On history and physical examination, we can rule out precipitating cause such as surgery, infection, pain. So treating those conditions will cure a atrial fibrillation. Apart from that, we can perform a thyroid function test to rule out thyroid atrial fibrillation secondary to hyperthyroidism. And after that, we perform an echocardiogram. Echocardiogram is initial test to find the cause of atrial fibrillation. So first test is an ECG, and the best test to diagnose the cause of atrial fibrillation is echocardiogram. Now let's come toward the treatment or the management of atrial fibrillation. It is very important and the most common tested thing in atrial fibrillation. So we will spend some good time to understand the management of atrial fibrillation. The atrial fibrillation management depend on that whether the atrial fibrillation is a transient, whether it's a persistent, or it is secondary to any precipitating factor. What is meant by the precipitating factor? If the atrial fibrillation is due to chest infection or pulmonary embolism, so to treat atrial fibrillation, we have to treat the cause of atrial fibrillation. We should treat the chest infection and pulmonary embolism, so it will cure atrial fibrillation. Apart from that, when the atrial fibrillation is secondary to hyperthyroidism, so for that patient we treat hyperthyroidism with propranolol. So for that it will cure atrial fibrillation. So in short, we mean that in treatment of atrial fibrillation, the first approach should be we should treat the precipitating factor. Apart from that, after excluding the precipitating factor, the second one is that whether we should treat the patient according to the type, that whether it's a transient or whether it's a persistent. Initially, we will study the paroxysmal atrial fibrillation or the transient atrial fibrillation, and after that we will study that how we will treat persistent atrial fibrillation. So let's begin with paroxysmal or the transient atrial fibrillation. Normally, the paroxysmal atrial fibrillation do not require treatment. It is well tolerated and it do not require any treatment. But when it presents with the symptoms, so the first line agent for the treatment of paroxysmal atrial fibrillation is beta blocker. The beta blocker will stop the ectopic firing which cause atrial fibrillation. So it is a best initial drug for paroxysmal atrial fibrillation. Along with that, if the patient have atrial fibrillation secondary to coronary artery disease, hypertension and cardiac failure, even in those patients we use a beta blocker. Apart from beta blocker, we can use class 1C drugs such as a propafenone and flecainide, but it is usually contraindicated if the atrial fibrillation is secondary to coronary artery disease or if there is a left ventricular dysfunction. Apart from class 1C drugs, we can also use class 3 antiarrhythmic drugs. The class 3 antiarrhythmic drugs include amiodarone, which can be used, but it has a large amount of adverse effect. So we can also use the dronidrone. The dronidrone have a same mechanism of action as amiodarone, but it is a less toxic. It is also inhibited in those patients who have a coronary artery disease or the left ventricular dysfunction. So in short, the class 1C drug and class 3 drugs are used, but it is used if the atrial fibrillation is due to other than coronary artery disease and left ventricular dysfunction. In these two conditions, the class 1C and the 3 drugs will have a lethal complication. Apart from these drugs, if the patient is resistant to drug therapy, we can also use catheter ablation. The catheter ablation is only used when the patient show resistance to drug therapy. So we will study a catheter ablation in a bit detail now. The catheter ablation is used when antiarrhythmic drugs fail. What we do in catheter ablation we ablate or we disconnect the pulmonary vein from left atria. As I discussed in pathogenesis that atrial fibrillation is usually arise due to ectopic firing in pulmonary vein. So when we disconnect it, the ectopic firing will be stopped and we cure the atrial fibrillation. Apart from that, as I discussed in the pathogenesis that atrial fibrillation can also arise from a diseased atrial tissue. So to treat that, we create an additional line of a conduction block within the atria. So when we place a conducting line block or we ablate a myocyte in atria, so it will block this reentrant looping which maintain the atrial fibrillation. So by this way we cure the atrial fibrillation with the help of catheter ablation. The catheter ablation cure the atrial fibrillation in about 75% of our cases, but it is associated with complications such as cardiac tamponade, stroke, phrenic nerve injury or pulmonary vein stenosis. So it was all about the treatment or the management of paroxysmal or the transient atrial fibrillation. Now we will switch our gear toward the treatment of persistent atrial fibrillation. To treat the persistent atrial fibrillation, we have two options. The first one is that attempt should be made to restore and maintain sinus rhythm. And the second one is that we accept that we cannot control the rhythm, so we switch our gear to control the ventricular rate. So the treatment of persistent atrial fibrillation is categorized into two types, whether we have to control rhythm or whether we have to control rate. And choosing either of option, whether we choose rhythm control or the rate control strategy, with both option we have to prophylax against thromboembolism. Let's discuss the rhythm control strategy. Remember that we control the rhythm in atrial fibrillation by two methods: pharmacological cardioversion and electrical DC cardioversion. If a patient is unstable, if a patient present with atrial fibrillation and is unstable, mean that he is hemodynamically compromised. So the ideal therapy is to directly convert the atrial fibrillation toward the normal sinus rhythm with the help of electrical cardioversion. And if the patient is stable, we can go for a pharmacological cardioversion. The pharmacological cardioversion is done with a flecainide when there is a no structure abnormality, and if there is a structure abnormality in a heart, we can use amiodarone. And after cardioverting a patient with pharmacological cardioversion with flecainide and amiodarone, we give amiodarone for prophylaxis to prevent the relapse. And the second one is the electrical DC cardioversion. In electrical or DC cardioversion, we actually give a synchronized electric shock at the QRS interval with the help of defibrillator. So this will cure the, or it will transform the irregular rhythm toward the normal sinus rhythm. Why we give the synchronized shock in atrial fibrillation? Because when in supraventricular tachycardia, when we give the desynchronized shock at the T wave, the atrial fibrillation will convert into a ventricular fibrillation and the patient can die due to ventricular fibrillation. That is why in all kind of supraventricular tachycardia, we give the synchronized DC conversion with the help of a defibrillator in which the electric current is applied at the QRS interval. So what happened in electrical cardioversion? In this, when we give an electrical shock, all the muscles of heart will depolarize, and the SA node is the first one to repolarize and depolarize. So when all myocytes get depolarized and the SA node is the first to repolarize and depolarize, so the heart will attain the rhythm according to the SA node. So the heart will attain a sinus rhythm. Remember an important point regarding the cardioversion. To cardiovert a patient, we have to check for the thromboprophylaxis treatment, that whether patient require the thromboprophylaxis or not. So for this, if the patient present with an atrial fibrillation and the duration of the atrial fibrillation is less than 48 hours. So when the duration is less than 48 hours, we can directly cardiovert a patient. But if there is a time duration of greater than 48 hours, or we do not know that the duration of time, so for that we have to put a patient on thromboprophylaxis. The thromboprophylaxis should be 4 weeks before the cardioversion, mean that we will start a thromboprophylaxis with warfarin. We continue it for a 4 week, then we perform a cardioversion, and after cardioversion we will maintain the warfarin for 3 months. So it was all about the rhythm control strategy, that how we will control the rhythm, or we can revert the rhythm from irregular toward the sinus rhythm. Now we will shift our gaze toward the rate control strategy for controlling atrial fibrillation. We control the atrial fibrillation with rate control strategy with the help of three drugs: beta blocker, digoxin, and the calcium channel blocker such as verapamil and the diltiazem. The beta blocker are the first line therapy for the control of rate control strategy. How these drugs work? These drugs work by inhibiting the AV node. So it will control the conduction toward the AV node. So it will control or slow down the ventricular rate. So it will show a striking improvement in atrial fibrillation. Other than these three drugs, beta blocker, digoxin, and calcium channel blocker, we can also use a pace and ablate strategy. So what is pace and ablate strategy? The pace and ablate strategy is used when we cannot control the rate with the help of these three drugs. What we do in pace and ablate strategy, we implant a permanent pacemaker which will determine the ventricular rate, and then we ablate the AV node. So the heart will contract or it will pace according to the permanent pacemaker. So that is why we implant a pacemaker and then we ablate a AV node, so the heart will have a ventricular rate according to the pacemaker. So this technique, pace and ablate, can also be used for rate controlling in atrial fibrillation. So it was all about the rhythm control and the rate control strategy in controlling persistent atrial fibrillation. Whether we choose rate control or the rhythm control, we have to prophylax the patient to prevent the risk of thromboembolism or the systemic embolic disease. So now we will study about the thromboprophylaxis in atrial fibrillation. The first question that came into our mind, that why we need a thromboprophylaxis in a patient with atrial fibrillation. Because we need a thromboprophylaxis because in atrial fibrillation there will be a loss of atrial contraction and the left atria will dilate, which will lead to stasis of a blood, which can lead to a thrombus formation in left atrial appendage. This thrombus which can be formed in left atrial appendage can circulate into a systemic circulation and can lead to stroke or other systemic embolic diseases. Now the second question arises, that how we will decide that which patient need a thromboprophylaxis. So for that we use a CHAD-VASc score system. In this system, there are different disease condition which contain a 1 or 2 point. On the basis of it, we decide that which patient need a thromboprophylaxis. In the CHA2DS score system, the C stand for congestive heart failure and contain 1 point. The H stand for hypertension, contain 1 point. The age greater than 75 contain 2 point. D stand for diabetic mellitus, it contain 1 point. The previous stroke or transient ischemic attack consists of 2 point. The V stand for a vascular disease, contain 1 point. The age between 65 to 75 contain 1 point. The SC stand for sex category female, contain 1 point. So the maximum score is a 9 point. All contain a 1 point, just age greater than 75 year, and the previous stroke consists of 2 point. So if the CHA2DS score is greater than 2, so if there is a greater than 2, we need to anticoagulate a patient with warfarin or the direct oral anticoagulant. And if the CHA2DS score system is less than 2, we do not need to coagulate a patient, mean that patient will not have a risk of thromboprophylaxis. For thromboprophylaxis, we use a warfarin. It is a best drugs, but it need a constant monitoring, and we should keep the INR between 2 to 3. Apart from warfarin, we can also use the direct oral anticoagulant. For this, we can use the factor 10A inhibitor, rivaroxaban, apixaban, and factor 2A inhibitor, dabigatran. Now the third question which can raises in our mind is that if we use a thromboprophylaxis, what we do, we actually thin a blood so there will be no formation of a clot. But this thinning can cause bleeding. So how we will control it? For that, we use a Hasbleed system. Hasbleed scoring system is a system like the CHA2DS scoring system. In this, there are total 9 points. If the Hasbleed score is greater than 3, you can study the Hasbleed system here. It is not important to know the Hasbleed system. It is just important to know that if it's greater than 3, we need a careful monitoring with thromboprophylaxis. If there is a bleeding and your patient is on a warfarin, use an antidote of warfarin such as a vitamin K. And if the patient is on direct oral anticoagulant, we can stop this drug and we can use an adalimumab, which will bind to a dabigatran and prevent this bleeding complication. So in short, when we treat the risk of thromboembolic diseases in atrial fibrillation, we calculate the risk of thromboembolic disease with the help of CHA2DS scoring system. If it's greater than 2, we start a thromboprophylaxis with warfarin or direct oral anticoagulant. And if the patient have a risk of bleeding due to the thromboprophylaxis, for that we use a Hasbleed system, and we can after calculating the Hasbleed scoring, if it's greater than 3, we put a careful monitoring of this thromboprophylaxis, and if the patient start bleeding, we control it with vitamin K or adalimumab. So it was all about the atrial fibrillation. If there is any question, you guys can ask, and stay tuned for more update.